All right, welcome. Today we are jumping into one of the most intense, and let's be honest, pretty troubling parts of the whole Bible. We're talking about Judges, chapters 13 through 18. This is the story of Samson. You know, the guy with incredible strength but even more incredible flaws. And right after him, we get this shocking look at a whole nation just spiraling out of control, religiously and morally. So, yeah, let's get right into it.
So here's our roadmap. We're going to start with the miraculous promise of a hero, Samson. Then we'll follow his wild ride, the crazy victories and the messy personal conflicts that lead to his tragic fall. But the story doesn't stop there. We then pull back to see how one guy's private failings kind of reflect what's happening to the entire nation. It's a wild arc, I'm telling you, from a divine calling straight into total anarchy.
Okay, chapter 13. To really get the picture, you gotta know that this is a dark time for Israel. They're being oppressed by their enemies, the Philistines. But right into this gloom and doom, a little ray of hope appears. A promise of a child who is destined to be a big deal. This is the setup for one of the Bible's most legendary figures, Samson.
Now, to understand Samson at all, you have to understand this word, Nazirite. This wasn't just some personal resolution, okay? It was a super serious, sacred vow of complete and total dedication to God. The rules were strict: no wine, no haircuts, and no touching dead things. It symbolized a life that was totally set apart for a holy purpose. And as we're about to see, Samson's vow is the key to his entire story.
I mean, look at how he enters the world. It's nothing short of miraculous. His mother couldn't have children, and an actual angel, shows up and says, "You're going to have a son, and he's going to start saving Israel." And the kicker? He's supposed to be a Nazirite his entire life. So the main thing to get here is that before he was even born, Samson had a huge, divinely appointed purpose. The stakes were incredibly high from day one.
So, you'd think with a setup like that, we're about to see a noble hero emerge, right? Well, not exactly. As Samson grows up, the very first thing we see isn't some heroic act. It's this deep conflict between his sacred mission and his own impulsive human desires. And this is where the story starts to get really, really messy.
So instead of, planning a rebellion against the Philistines, Samson sees a Philistine woman and immediately goes to his parents and demands they arrange a marriage. And his reason? She pleases me well. Or in modern terms, she looks good to me. Right out of the gate, his decisions are being driven by his gut, by his appetite, not by his divine calling. It's a massive conflict of interest. And right here, you see his super casual attitude towards his vows. I mean, think about it. On his way to see this woman, the Spirit of God gives him the power to kill a lion with his bare hands. Insane, right? But then later, he walks by the carcass, sees honey inside it, and just scoops him out and eats it. That's a huge no-no for a Nazirite. You can't touch a dead body. It seems small, but this is the first crack in the foundation. It's a dangerous first step, showing you how easily a great calling can start to crumble. So at his own wedding feast, he's feeling pretty smug about his little lion-killing secret. So he makes up this riddle and poses it to his 30 Philistine wedding guests. He bets them a whole bunch of expensive clothes, totally confident they'll never figure it out. This isn't just a fun party game. It's a taunt. It's Samson showing off.
Well, the Philistines can't solve it, so they resort to threatening Samson's new wife. She cries and begs him for the answer until he finally caves, and she immediately runs and tells them. Samson is furious, and his response is pretty legendary. But here's the fascinating part. In his rage, the Spirit of the Lord comes on him. He goes to a Philistine city, strikes down 30 men, and uses their clothes to pay off his bet. It's wild. God is actually using Samson's personal drama and his quest for revenge to start chipping away at Israel's enemies. And now, things escalate. Big time. What started as a simple wedding riddle gone sour is about to explode into all-out war. And this next part really shows off Samson's incredible strength and just how scared his own people were. So after Samson takes his revenge, the Philistines gather a huge army in Judah. And how does Samson's own countrymen from Judah respond? Do they rally behind their hero? Nope. 3,000 of them march out, not to fight with Samson, but to tie him up and hand him over to the enemy. It is a stunning act of betrayal. They are so much more afraid of the Philistines than they are faithful to God's plan. But here we go again. Just as he's handed over, totally bound and seemingly helpless, that divine power kicks in. The text says, "The Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him." The ropes holding him just dissolve. They become like burnt string.
You see, even when his own people abandon him, God's purpose isn't going to be stopped.
So now he's free, and he grabs the first weapon he can find, a fresh donkey's jawbone. Not exactly a sword, right? But with this crude weapon, he single-handedly takes down 1,000 Philistine soldiers. It's just a jaw-dropping display of God's power working through this one very flawed man.
So Samson judges Israel for 20 years after that, but his story now takes its final, tragic turn. This is the man who could snap any rope, but he just couldn't break the chains of his own weakness. And his constant compromises finally catch up to him, leading to his complete and utter downfall.
And this is where Delilah comes in. The Philistines bribe her to find the secret to his strength. And she just goes at it, systematically. 3 times she asks, and 3 times Samson lies to her, treating his sacred power like it's some kind of joke. He's playing with fire, and with each lie, he gets closer and closer to the actual truth, until she finally just wears him down completely.
Okay, this next line, it's just one of the most heartbreaking lines in the entire Bible. Seriously. After he finally breaks and tells Delilah the truth about his hair, the symbol of his vow, she has it shaved off while he sleeps. When she shouts, "The Philistines are here, Samson," he jumps up thinking, "Oh, I'll just shake them off like always." But he had no idea. He didn't realize that the Lord had left him. The consequence of that final compromise was total abandonment. His strength was gone.
So they capture him, they blind him, and they force him to grind grain like a common slave. But in that humiliation, something changes. Samson finds humility. As his hair slowly starts to grow back, he offers one last desperate prayer to God. They bring him out to be the main entertainment at a festival for their god Dagon. He asks God for strength just one last time, places his hands on the main pillars of the temple, and pushes. He brings the whole temple down, killing thousands of Philistines and himself. In his death, he finally fulfills his calling in the biggest way possible.
Now the camera suddenly pans away from Samson. The story makes a sharp pivot. We go from this larger-than-life hero to the quiet, private home of some guy named Micah. And what we find there is a picture of a nation where the faith has completely rotted from the inside out. This line right here, it becomes the theme song for the rest of the book of Judges. It's the perfect diagnosis of what's wrong with Israel. There's no leadership, and more importantly, they've forgotten that God is their king. So what happens? Total anarchy. Everybody just makes up their own rules. And this whole sequence with Micah is just bizarre. It shows how confused they were about their own religion. First, he steals a ton of money from his mom. Then, when he gives it back, she decides to dedicate it to the Lord by having a silver idol made, the very thing God commanded them not to do. Then Micah builds his own personal shrine, makes his son the priest, and finally hires a random Levite who's just passing through, thinking that having an official priest makes his homemade religion okay. It's a mess. So you might think, okay, that's just one weird family. But it doesn't stay private. This little DIY religion that Micah cooked up in his house is about to go public, in a big way. This chapter shows how fast that kind of spiritual rot can spread when there's no one in charge.
You can just see the corruption snowballing here. First, you have Micah, who just wants to feel religiously secure. Then you have the Levite priest, who's motivated purely by greed. He ditches Micah in a heartbeat for a better offer. And finally, the entire tribe of Dan comes along, motivated by power. They don't just ask, they steal Micah's idols and his priest, and make this whole corrupt, stolen system their tribe's official religion. Personal sin just became national policy.
So, what are the big takeaways from this whole downward spiral? Well, Samson's life is a huge lesson that having a great calling doesn't make you immune to a great fall. And those little compromises, they can add up to total ruin. But at the same time, we see that God can still accomplish his purposes through incredibly flawed people. And the story of Micah and the tribe of Dan is a chilling reminder. When people just abandon God's law and do their own thing, society falls apart.
And that's the question this whole section leaves us with. The book of Judges shows us a world where everyone did what was right in his own eyes, and the result was just chaos, violence, and decay. It really makes you think, doesn't it? In any time and any culture, if everyone just decides on their own truth, what's left to hold everything together? Definitely something to chew on. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.